In Megabonk, there are a lot of items that don't exactly tell you what they do in their description. I have covered the hidden mechanics behind some of them in my previous videos, and I was originally going to make a final video on this topic that goes through every single item. Unfortunately, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to do. The developer is constantly cooking and items keep changing, so I figured what the game really needs is a wiki that explains it all and gets updated when the game updates. So instead, I created this website that explains all the items in a lot greater detail. On this website, I have categorized all items as either self-explanatory, mostly self-explanatory, or not self-explanatory. This is somewhat opinionated, but an item like the wrench is clearly self-explanatory because every single copy does exactly what the description says. The burger, on the other hand, I've actually categorized as not self-explanatory. If you played the game, you obviously know that a burger just heals you, but from just reading the description, you would have no idea what a burger does. You probably don't know how much it heals you either, so I have written that out in, well, perhaps a bit extreme amount of detail, but a too long didn't read for this. Usually a burger heals you for 8% of your max HP, but depending on what your max HP is, it can actually heal you for more. Little fun fact as an example, if your max HP is 10,000, you need 400 burgers to heal you more than 8%. Very cool. For items that are categorized as mostly self-explanatory, we have stuff like the golden shield. The description here is completely accurate. You get extra gold from taking damage, but for the majority of players, it's relevant to know how much and that different damage sources give you different amounts of gold. So if you click on it, we can see that if we pick up a golden shield at level 100, we get 26 gold from damage taken from enemies. But if the damage source is Kevin or Leeching Crystal, we only get 3 gold. For the vast majority of self-explanatory items, there usually isn't more info when you look at the detailed explanation, because, well, it simply isn't required. There are a few exceptions though, like the magnet, which I would argue is self-explanatory, but I've included some info on how often it pulls with more copies and its radius and so on. Another example is the golden ring. It's also self-explanatory since it does literally nothing, but if you're really curious, I have included the chances of getting one. Basically, if you roll a legendary, there's a 1 in 400 chance to get a golden ring. Also, if you have completed less than 6 Megabonk runs, you cannot get a golden ring at all. I'll leave a link to the wiki in the description where you can read everything for yourself, but for the remainder of this video, I will explain a few core concepts that are true for most items in the game. This is stuff like hyperbolic scaling, what Proc Coefficient is, and a note on the different stat brackets. First and foremost, I want to talk a bit about hyperbolic scaling. The graph you see here represents how a few items stack when you have multiple of them, including the key. The reason is very simply to prevent items from being too overpowered. 10 keys do not give you a 100% chance to open a free chest, but it gives you a 50% chance. All items that scale this way have an associated max value. With the key, this is 100%. This is a value that every copy of the key will contribute in going towards, but it will never quite reach it. With 100 copies, we have a 90.9% chance. Other items have different max values. For the cursed grabbies, this is 50% as an example. Here is a list of some items that all use hyperbolic scaling when you get more copies. They all have a certain percentage in the description, and all of them are slightly wrong. The real percentage from having one copy can be seen on the screen. The reason for this is a bit technical and can be read in full detail on the wiki, but I'll try to explain it as simply as I can without all the math. Basically, in the code, there's a function that all items that scale this way use. This function takes in 3 parameters. The input parameter is where the number in the description comes from. So for the key, this is 0.1, which is equal to the 10% in the description. But after it's run through the function and has done all the math, this actually comes out to 9.09% for one key, which I rounded up to 9.1% in the graph. Interestingly enough, the ice crystal scales exactly the same as the key. This might surprise you since this item says you get a 7.5% chance to freeze an enemy, but when you input 0.075 as the input with the same other parameters, you actually get the exact same result. This means that both the key and the ice crystal stacks completely identical, and this graph is true for both of them. Usually the chance in game is close enough to the description to a point where you won't really notice it in game. But if you ever felt like something procced more or less often than it should, well, this is probably why. Another important thing to note here is about something called the Proc Coefficient. To explain this, let's look at Unstable Transfusion. It says it has a 35% chance to apply a stack of Blood Mark. This 35% chance is accurate since it uses linear scaling and not hyperbolic scaling. However, it is assumed that whatever procs this item has a proc coefficient of 1, which most projectile-based weapons do have, but some of the multi-hit weapons like Aura or Axe have a lower proc coefficient to make up for it hitting enemies much more. There are also other items like these ones that all have the ability to proc other items, such as Unstable Transfusion, and each of these have the following proc coefficient. When an item like the Holy Book has a proc coefficient of 0.5, it means it's only half as likely to proc something. This means that while the Holy Book can proc Unstable Transfusion, it only has a 17.5% chance to do so, while an arrow from the bow has a 35% chance. All the percentage chances that you see in the description always assumes that whatever procced it has a proc coefficient of 1. This does make sense because a lot of weapons do have that. On the topic of proccing items, I do want to mention that currently what order you pick up items in does matter. This has been speculated for a while and the top runners have known it, but it was recently confirmed by the developer himself. Basically, if you get a spicy meatball before the cursed doll, the meatball can proc much more and you'll end up doing much more damage, especially in the final waves. There is a page on the wiki that explains this in a bit more detail. This message is directly from the developer, and I'm not gonna explain it further since this will get fixed in the next Megabonk update. After that, the order of which you pick up item in will not matter anymore. But as of recording this video, it still very much matters and makes a significant difference in high kill runs. Next up, I want to quickly mention the different stat brackets in the game. You might already know this, but different sources of damage are in different brackets. What this means is that if you have 10% damage from gem source and 20% damage from an item like the beer, which is in another bracket, these values don't simply add together but gets multiplied. So for instance, you can see here I have 10 gem sources and my damage multiplier is at 2.0x. If I then spawn in a beer, you can see it becomes 2.4x. If these values were to simply add together, this would have been 2.2x, since the beer simply adds 20% damage. But since they get multiplied with each other, since they're in different brackets, it becomes 2.4x instead. So gem source always gives a raw plus 10% damage and is therefore categorized as self-explanatory on the wiki. But keep in mind that if you have damage from other sources, it may be more than 10% in game and be significantly stronger. The same goes for stuff like the time bracelet, which gives you plus 8% XP per watch. But this is multiplied with any XP from the XP tome, as it is in its own bracket together with Spaceman's passive. I do have a page on the wiki that just showcases the different damage brackets, but that's about all there is on stats on the wiki for now. Mainly the wiki just covers items specifically, but if this video gets good feedback, I'll probably add more information to it in the future. So if you want me to include even more info and keep the website updated and stuff, all I ask is that you leave a like on this video. The link to the wiki will be in the description. And if you find any information on the wiki that you think is wrong or is missing something, please don't hesitate to contact me. I'll get it updated as fast as I can. I've obviously done a lot of testing, both in-game and also data mining, to figure out exactly how all of this works, but it is not always an exact science, so it is possible I got something wrong or that I'm missing something, especially if an item is bugged. But the vast majority of info on the website should definitely be correct. So I hope you find it useful, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.